All right, turning our attention to some Michigan politics and headlines. And to do that, let's bring in Stephen Henderson of WDET and welcome back Dennis Darnoi, Republican strategist and go-to guy when we talk about Michigan politics. It's good to see you, Dennis.
Good seeing you.
You know, it's very strange to be sitting at a bar and be drinking something hot.
Yeah, well,
usually
you need
I'm drinking
to,
something
right?
cold at the bar,
Not,
but this weather has been insane.
I have a Coke, but it's not as cold as the weather.
All right, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, what we're seeing from our Michigan Congressional Delegation. We talked about the shutdown and everything that has gone on in Washington. Steve, I'm going to start with you. How do you see our delegation kind of positioning themselves and having a voice on where everything kind of goes forward
So
from
I've
here?
talked both with Debbie Dingell, who's a Democrat from Dearborn, and Fred Upton, who's a Republican from St. Joe's about this, and they actually are trying to work together.
Well, and the fact that they've worked together is no secret. That's kind of what their thing is together.
Yeah, I mean, they really are trying to rally some of the other members of the House together to come up with long-term solutions. They're not as concerned with this kind of silly standoff over the wall and the government shutdown, but saying, how about we move the conversation to something that will solve something bigger so that we're not in this position again. And they both come from pretty reasonable positions. They are different positions, but I think they're positions that they can find some common ground over.
Do you think it's really possible, Dennis, to find common ground? Because I think when people sit back and watch what has happened in some of the rhetoric coming from both sides, it's like, wow, it's going to be very hard to make anyone happy in this situation.
Sure. I mean, I think so on certain issues specific to Michigan. And that's where you can see a Debbie Dingell and Fred Upton, who understand issues that affect this state, looking to find solutions. So yeah, within the delegation itself, absolutely. Maybe the larger Congress, not so much. But definitely it serves Michigan well.
But do you think that they're going to be able to really, I mean, again, if you can serve Michigan very well, but, I think you're seeing a lot of people that don't have a lot of faith in ability for compromise.
I don't know what the compromise looks like here, and I've asked each of the members, actually, of the delegation, including Dan Kildee and Rashida Tlaib, Gary Peters. I asked them all, what's the thing that one side backs away from in order to solve this? And no one has had an answer. I mean, Democrats are dug in on the idea that there should not be a $1 for the border wall. And I think that's a very respectable position because that wasn't where this even started. I mean, the president injected that issue into this one rather falsely after the election. At the same time, the president is just as dug in on the idea of the wall. I think if there's room for any sort of play in the joints, it's got to be with Republican members of Congress, most of whom I don't think are all that passionate about the wall. I mean, some of them are, but there may be enough to peel off to say, you're going to have to drop that, and maybe we get something in exchange for it that Democrats aren't happy with, but the wall itself probably has to come out of this conversation for a deal to get made.
What's your sense on that, Dennis?
Well, I think it's right, but I do think that the president is really dug in. I think as he faces a re-election campaign, he sees that as an issue that's going to play to his base. So he's given Congress until February 15th to come up with a solution. But I think that wall is something that we're going to hear about for quite a while. Now, to your point about Republicans being peeled away from that, if you look at what happened in the Senate, there were about 6 votes, Republican votes, that said we're open to reopening government without that wall.
But you need another 4 or 5, I think, to get to that 60 number beyond that 6.
Absolutely,
right?
and I think the pain of this past shutdown and the impact that it's having on Republicans, you will start to see over time. And here's the other thing, that I think Republicans draw a line at the expansion of executive power. So if he were to go the route and claim that there is an emergency at the border and that he has the powers to do this without Congress, I do think that you'll see a universal reaction in opposition to that, and definitely led by Republicans.
Yeah, I want to get both of your sense on an overall picture of how you think everyone perceives our Michigan Congressional Delegation. I mean, we have some new members here, Alyssa Slotkin, making a lot of noise, Rashida Tlaib nationally, people are following her on a national level as well. I want to kind of get perceptions from both of you on that.
Yeah, I think I talked to Rashida this week about the big splash that she made when she got to Congress, and it was really interesting to hear her answers to my questions 3 weeks later versus what she said earlier. I mean, I think she's learned really quickly that you get attention very easily when you're a member of Congress, and you can get attention that you don't necessarily want.
Good and bad,
right? Yeah. She doesn't want to be talking about curse words. She wants to be talking about the issues, and so I think she's pivoted really, really nicely to try to get more positive kinds of attention for her ideas. And she made such a big splash that she's somebody who's ahead of a lot of other freshman members that way.
Perceptions, Dennis.
Yeah, and I think that the younger congresswomen who were just recently elected bring in a different approach and a different style, which is going to garner them attention. And yes, there's negative and there's positive attention, but I think we'll be speaking favorably about what they're doing in the Congress over the next 2 years.
All right, in the time that we have left, I want to talk a little bit about state issues. Governor Gretchen Whitmer is going to be giving her State of the State address, and she just announced this week she's going to be moving it so it doesn't actually conflict with President Trump's State of the Union on the 5th. She'll be giving it on the 12th of February. But Stephen, what do you see kind of shaping up with her agenda this first month that
I think she's been very effective at figuring out the things that she can move on her own without having to go to the Republican legislature. She's gotten a number of executive orders signed and gotten people talking about some issues that way. She is going to have to eventually, though, sit down and get the legislature to do some of the things she needs them to do. Roads being, I think, first on that list. We'll see what she does with her budget. We'll see what she says about it in the State of the State. But eventually it comes down to, sitting across the table from that other party and getting them to go along.
And what does she have to do, Dennis, to get them to go along or to see her agenda through her eyes?
She's going to have to craft a path that merges both the House interests and the Senate interests. I mean, she can cut a deal with the House, but if it doesn't appeal to the Senate, then it won't fly. And there are diverse personalities, so it's going to be a really difficult negotiation process. But like Stephen said, sit down at the table, see where you can agree, get those early victories, I think, and then try to work on some of the bigger things.
This is somebody with relationships in the legislature already. Mike Shirkey, who's the Republican majority leader in the Senate, he's worked with Gretchen Whitmer before. Lee Chatfield is newer to the chamber and wasn't someone she worked with, but he's been open. She has an opportunity that I don't know that we've seen a governor have with the legislature since John Engler, to be able to build those relationships strongly.
And she understands that the legislature is a co-equal branch. Unlike the past governor who thought that he could come in with an agenda and that they would follow his lead, she knows that she has to compromise and has to work with both sides.
Yeah, a little bit of a different feel. All right, we're going to be watching that. Dennis Darnoi, it's always good to
Thank
see
you.
you. All right, and Stephen, we're going to see you a little bit later.